Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today I wanted to look at right backs in a bit more detail and touch on a question I think not a lot of people are asking when they're talking about right backs this summer for Manchester City. The reports of possibly pulling out of the Livramento deal. Everyone's talking about what players City could be going for, whereas instead in this video I want to talk about what type of right back we should be looking for, where are the areas to be concerned about with our current options that we do have. And at the very start, it's worth mentioning that in my opinion they won't be on the lookout for a short-term option. We have plenty of short-term options, and part and parcel to being a short-term option is they will be unpopular to different people. So the likes of Matheus Nunes, Rico Lewis, Manuel Akanji, even a few people suggesting Kusenov. These are all players that have certain qualities that fit somewhat into the role of a right back, some more than others, and also come with plenty of concerns in different areas, as I'll mention a little bit later in this video. There is all your short-term options that you would need to play in a variety of different ways to handle the minute loads across the season. What Manchester City will be looking for is somebody that could do that job long-term, that ticks as many boxes as possible, provides more than all of these short-term options in one, that comes with some experience, that is dependable, reliable with their fitness, and that's all the stuff that we'll get into throughout this video. So if we go to Matheus Nunes, he really stood out for how well he fitted into this new system that Guardiola was using, with the fullbacks out wide, arriving dynamically into the wide areas rather than a winger being out there holding width and being stationary as they receive the ball. That kind of set up suit Nunes very well. You saw the fact that he provided a lot of runs off the ball, getting ahead of players, ahead of the ball. You think about him in the Club World Cup coming into midfield, and then as Savinho holds the width, he makes the underlapping run. All of those sort of things we missed from Kyle Walker towards the end of his time. We missed from Rico Lewis being in that position, much more of a kind of small technical player that's looking to pull players out of position and find the ball in tight spaces. So with Matheus Nunes, you instantly got that injection of runs ahead of the ball when we were in possession, and that really did help Manchester City. But then when it comes to pressing out wide, it's a really key area for City with the way that they set up and they want to press the opposition and lock them out wide on the touchline and use that to defend. This is somebody that has not been as capable pressing directly against players and making the right judgment. We saw in a Club World Cup 8 and already have some struggles learning that, but Matheus Nunes over many games, it's just not something he's been well suited for. And if he was to continue into next season being that full-time option, then that's something he'd need to really improve on. Part of that is winning long balls, dealing with second ball situations. We've seen throughout his time that that's not particularly his strong suit. You look at aerial duels per 90, he wins 0.75, 42.4%. Compare that to Kyle Walker, who's virtually always been over 50% throughout his career, and wins near enough 1.5 aerial duels per 90 across his Premier League time with Manchester City. Only really a decline in last season, which was not only a physical decline, but in my opinion, seemed to be a few other things where you just didn't get a player that was entirely focused and performing at the level he could do, even if he had declined physically. When it comes to Matheus Nunes, he's just not that kind of player at the moment that's going to be really dominant in the air, as I mentioned with the pressing. And then we saw throughout his time when he was playing as a right back, and this has certainly improved to a degree throughout games, but that defending 1v1 out wide, you look at the dribblers tackled per 90, 0.86, 42.1% of dribblers that he tackles. It's just not somebody that deals particularly well with those 1v1 situations out wide. So they're all the kind of different areas when you're looking at Matheus Nunes, along with being that kind of focused player in the box, defending the back post, being alive, organising in a back four shape, keeping that line along with the other defenders. These are all the areas for Matheus Nunes that he doesn't provide for you, whilst giving you what he does in the final third with his runs ahead of the ball, his crossing ability to drive those along the 6-yard box, running capacity, getting up and down the touchline. There's a lot of positives there, and that's why it made a big impact when he started playing more games, especially with the setup that we have. But when you're looking for that new option, you want to have all those positives, and you need to improve on the negatives that I've outlined there for Matheus Nunes. Now, if we move on to Rico Lewis, you've then got a player that ticks a lot of boxes for the kind of role aspect. So when you're looking at right back options, Guardiola won't want a player that is entirely fixed to being a right back that just gets up and down and provides you overlapping runs. You need to have variety to your game, so you need to do the underlaps and the overlapping runs. Ideally, be comfortable sitting into a back three. Ideally, be able to move into more midfield spaces. And we saw across Kyle Walker's career, he's somebody that, whilst he struggled with the idea of moving into midfield, he was always able to make those runs into the final third that would support the attack, despite not being somebody that would be a threat per se, and then was also comfortable joining the back line in the back three, as well as being somebody that was outstanding 1v1 with his recovery pace. So he had that quality that pushed him into the team, despite having some areas where he was cutting corners and where you're cutting corners as a right back and not having the best option you could have when you compare to what we're seeing with PSG last season with Hakimi and Nuno Mendes, that were able to do pretty much everything I'm describing here, whether it's going forward, defending, fitting in the back line, moving into midfield, etc. And that's the kind of right back you are looking for. Obviously, that's going to be very hard to find, but when you're Manchester City, when you're going for the Premier League, when you have plenty of short-term options, you don't want to be wasting your time and money with those short-term options and blocking the move for a player that could eventually fit into that. Now, I mentioned Rico Lewis, exceptional in the small spaces, really tenacious, winning back the ball in those kind of small pocket areas. But then when you increase the space, that's where he struggles. We've seen him struggle to get back and defend a back post, particularly when you're talking about pressing high, and this is a theme across all the players that I will mention throughout this. He's great in the situation when he's arrived and then he's in that 1v1 battle, because he is so tenacious and dogged in those situations, as well as 1v1 situations, defending right out wide along the touchline when we're defending in a block. You've seen him have success in those two moments when he is nice and tight to the player, but the spring to be able to get up to and then get tight, that's where he does get caught out. And when he's not tight, you then give the opportunity for a player to be able to spin you, use their strength, use their agility to get past Rico Lewis. And then once he's passed, he doesn't have the recovery ability when you're out in the wide areas dealing with some of the wingers that you have in the Premier League. So, and obviously aerial duels is not a particular strength of Rico Lewis. So that really speaks to where Rico Lewis should be moving to in the future of his career, which is playing more of a midfield role. You think of kind of number 8 alongside Rodri that you see Bernardo Silva play. I think that would be a great fit for him, that kind of role. But when you're talking about playing as a right back, there's a lot of use to him inverting in midfield for certain games where you know you're covered with the other players that are in the team, the other defenders in that back line. And we saw in the first couple of seasons he played for Manchester City that was more than fine. But then it got exposed when you didn't have that cover, you didn't have the players to win the long balls, handle those situations, you didn't have the kind of recovery pace of other players in the team. That then gets exposed with Rico Lewis in the team as a right back. So those are the kind of areas you're looking at there. Again, with Nunes, having somebody that could press very, very effectively is going to be important. We've seen with Aiton Nori in the Club World Cup, that is an area he has to be better at. When it comes to playing for Manchester City next season, we can't bring a right back that sacrifices in that area if they're our long-term fit for the position. Moving on to Kusenov, I just wanted to mention him in particular just because I've seen a few different conversations online. So he's somebody great at making recovery challenges when he's getting back, which is why I think he'd be so much better suited to be in that right centre back, eventually succeeding Ruben Diaz, that is able to recover should that right back be beaten. But being somebody that is drawn out wide and having to defend 1v1 with very tricky, quick, agile wingers, that's the situation where he will struggle. So when the ball isn't behind and he has to make that recovery challenge coming across, good for Kusenov. When he's having to slow right down and deal 1v1 with a winger, that's where over the course of a season where he will get exposed, and that's not to his greatest strength. As well as that, his box defending, you'd want to move him in centrally to be able to do his best work there, rather than having to defend crosses out wide that you see more of a fullback do. And then the last thing is we can't have a right back that is giving you not just no threat in the final third. So as I mentioned with Walker, still gives you a lot of runs ahead of the ball, somebody that will drive forward, that will get into higher positions to receive the ball, despite not being the most threatening player from a crossing perspective, or once he gets into the box. But with Kusenov, as we've seen throughout last season, this is not somebody comfortable pushing really high up the pitch, out in wide areas. And when you're looking at the likes of Kanji when he was playing, he was much more comfortable than Kusenov pushing up high, yet still wasn't able to offer as much threat running beyond and adding more to his game as we moved across the season. But with Kusenov, particularly that game against Nottingham Forest comes to mind. He's just not comfortable pushing right up high as a right back. It's not a position he's used to being in. And then you're also adding to that his strength relies on him as a passer rather than being a ball carrier. When you're moving him out wide, particularly in the system that we would play, you put a lot of dependency on how well that right back can carry the ball as well. Itanori very well suited to it. Kyle Walker perfectly fine with doing it. Mateus Nunes fine with all the carrying work that he has to do, but for Kusenov less so. So for all of those kind of things that I've mentioned, that's just why I don't see Kusenov being best suited. You move him to right back, suits a lot better for his recovery challenges, using his pace, coming across the support, being more of a box defender, his passing ability from the back in deeper positions, ticks so many more boxes, as well as being in a better position to be able to compete in the aerial duels when the opposition goes long. That's the position you want Kusenov to be in rather than playing as a right back. Manuel Akanji, I think, had a good period when we're talking about the treble season, but for me, I think we found out in the 23-24 season that when he was inverting into midfield and moving forward a lot more, he was eventually found out with his ability on the ball as an attacking threat, much less than John Stones, which is why when Stones was out and Akanji was playing more of that kind of inverted role, we just weren't effective when Akanji was your spare man. And when you're talking about leaving that right back to be on the ball, both Walker, Akanji, players that as passers just ain't as dangerous as having somebody like Cancelo playing as a right back. And then you add to that over the last couple of seasons that the concern has only increased more so with the kind of athleticism of Akanji, his recovery pace, covering the ground out wide. I think with his injuries as well on top of that, to put him in a position there where we're looking for somebody that is very agile and quick, able to get up and down the touchline all game long, that's able to spring forward with some real pace to be able to press the opposition. That's not something I'd associate with Akanji that we saw from last season, whether he was playing with injury or not. And especially when it comes to the 23-24 season, when you're combining both of those two seasons, I just don't think it's going to be well suited for the way that City will want to play, compared to you're looking at the way that Itanori is able to spring out and press, just Mateus Nunes as well, able to jump and press and cover a lot of ground so quickly. Just not something that you'd want to have somebody like Akanji as well as Kusenov having players like that. You want to use their physicality, their strength, their athleticism in the right areas, and more so for Akanji, you'd want to keep him away from having to defend high and wide out on the pitch, playing as a right back. And then the other thing I wanted to mention just with Kyle Walker, so all of these stuff I've touched on throughout this video is he ticks all of these boxes. Less so with the kind of threat in the final third, and we've seen more from Mateus Nunes, and that's kind of the desire that people will have for a more effective right back in the final third. But as he got towards the end of his career, he became more and more that guy that was dependent on delivering 1v1, having that recovery pace, defending very well in the back post, winning his aerial duels. And once that went last season and in the performance aspect, then that's when you saw just a really that kind of player fall apart and not be effective in any way whatsoever. At least with Mateus Nunes, when you're seeing the concerns about him defending 1v1, maybe not pressing very well, but you are seeing somebody that's very good at getting up and down the touchline, that will make the runs ahead of the ball, that's willing to put crosses in. So you have something there to build on, and you can see the value in playing him as a right back despite the other concerns. But with Kyle Walker, he wasn't very much of a threat on the ball as a passer. He became less and less somebody that was charging and running into the final third and getting into the box. less and less somebody that was putting crosses into the box. So you were selecting him for his ability to be dependable with his fitness aspect, which declined last season, dependable in his performances, dependable as a defender, and that went last season. So then you just don't have a reliable option. And when you're talking about particularly the fullback positions for a Pep Guardiola team, these two positions are really kind of part of the structure of the team. You need players that are there week in, week out. And when you're looking at previous seasons of Kyle Walker, he's somebody that I believe over the last 10 years has only missed 22 Premier League games due to injury or illness. That's pretty incredible numbers. That speaks to everything I'm talking about being reliable, being dependable. You look at Cancelo in his two real kind of like peak seasons, 2021, and then but in particular the 21-22 season. That's somebody that was available week in, week out for Manchester City, as well as performing week in, week out. So for those positions, you need somebody that's always available, that's always able to be there. You look at Ake and Akanji during the treble season, pretty much always available, always dependable defensively, able to do their job. So when it comes to looking at what we want in a fullback, in a right back in particular, as we've gone through this video, you need to find improvements out of possession. So you need a player that's able to press very well, spring up, read the pressing triggers, cover the ground explosively, and then also read those situations very well about applying pressure and forcing the opposition back. Those areas you need to watch for. Winning long balls, winning second balls. You don't need somebody that's going to win 3 aerial duels per 90 like Jumabar does as a centre back. You're looking for somebody that can at the very least just win the majority of their share of the duels. You compare that to the likes of Rico Lewis, the likes of Mateus Nunes, as somebody that can't win a majority of their aerial duels. So then that gives you, as the opposition, a route out to play long over to that side, knowing that if I can make that stick, make a player come across, my winger like Semenyo, like Traore, can win the knockdown, and then we're able to build out from the back and play against Manchester City. So you want to cover that as a weak spot, and you just need a right back that's able to hold their own in that regard. So pressing, long balls, second balls, you need somebody that, like Mateus Nunes, is athletic, cover the touchline up and down all game long, that's not going to drop in the last 20 minutes of the game. You're looking for ideally a kind of match for the attacking qualities of Mateus Nunes, or to provide something more. So at the very least, you need a player at right back that's able to run ahead of the ball and pull opposition players out of position, support the winger just by making the runs rather than being the main threat. Anything on top of that would be a bonus. And then when it comes to the kind of experience level, if you look at over the years, you look at when they brought in Kyle Walker, when they brought in João Cancelo, when they brought Danilo in, when you're looking at all these different fullback options, Aït-Nouri as well most recently, they're all players that had a good amount of experience before they brought them in. So they weren't looking at a 19-year-old that's played 1,000 minutes in a European league, and then they thought, right, he's great, let's chuck him in, and he's going to play 3,000 minutes every single season for Manchester City. Tino Livramento, whether that deal is something that can still happen or not, I don't know. But he was a sweet spot in that he was still very young, but he already had 2 full seasons in the Premier League for Newcastle under his belt. Aït-Nouri, 3 or 4 like really good long seasons with Wolves in the Premier League, despite just turning 24. So those 2 players were the sweet spot of that experience, but still being really quite young and having a big career ahead of them. So when you're looking at other players and players like Martin Fernandes, very, very talented, 19, barely played over 1,000 minutes for Porto in the league last season. Reed playing for Feyenoord 1 season in the Eredivisie. So these are really big risks in that regard, and a departure from what we're used to for City, particularly in the fullback area. So that's just something that I'd bear in mind. So as I go through, you're looking for improvements on Mateus Nunes out of possession, defending, the pressing ability. You're looking ideally to match the attacking qualities of Nunes or add something more. You're looking for players that come in with a good amount of experience, so they can still be 22, 23, 24, but you need to reduce the risk that you're not bringing in somebody that's only played 1 season, and then you're making a jump to move them into quite an important position. And then Last of all, just to mention that you're looking for a player that can play multiple roles within a team. If you go back to before the Club World Cup and you see the reports about Milos Kerkez and Aït-Nouri being two options Manchester City are considering, if you look at the way that Aït-Nouri is able to play in the Club World Cup and move inside, be out wide more like a winger and hold the width, play more next to Rodri like a pivot in midfield, able to find the spaces coming inside, looking for the half space as a winger pulls out wide and then get into the box. All these different options in the roles that Aït-Nouri is able to play is possible because of the player, and then it gives you all those options for the team around him to then shape up and make those kind of rotations and so on. If you bring in somebody like Milos Kerkez, who is exceptional with his ability, with his lapping runs and making runs ahead of the ball, but then if you're asking him to join as a part of a back three, if you're asking him to be a threat on the ball as a passer, compared to Aït-Nouri, it's a different level. You're asking him to move into midfield, cannot do that. So you're already seeing the difference it would have if you're bringing a player that's really limited to one role. And at least with Kyle Walker, he give you some options, limited more so to the likes of João Cancelo, but he did give you some options, and he was outstanding in his quality, defending 1v1 and his recovery pace. You compare that to Milos Kerkez and he doesn't bring that same outstanding quality. So if you're going to limit to a player that can only play one or two roles like that, then there needs to be an outstanding quality to justify it, and justify it ahead of the other players in the team. If you're talking about somebody with exceptional recovery pace, but we have Kusenov as the regular centre-back over the next few years, then it becomes less important for that recovery pace. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Just something different. I wanted to talk through the qualities of the player, what we're looking for in a right back, rather than going through some of the names that people are talking about online. If I've missed anything out, if there's something you're confused about, have any questions, please let me know down below in the replies, and I'll jump in and get in there and hopefully try and explain some of the things you're confused about. Please make sure you like the video to support the channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video, and we'll be back with plenty more content across next week.